Mr. Harold was one of the most successful businessmen in the city. Everyone knew his name. One evening, his grandson Ryan came to visit. Ryan sat across from his grandfather, Mr. Harold, in his warm, book-filled study. Harold was one of the most successful businessmen in the city. Everyone knew his name. "Grandpa," Ryan said, "how did you become so successful? What was your first big break?" Harold smiled, leaning back in his chair. "My first job wasn't a big break at all," he said. "It was the smallest job you could imagine." Ryan looked confused. "What do you mean?" Harold's eyes softened, as if traveling back in time. "Let me tell you a story," he said. Many years ago, a teenage Harold walked into a small rundown shop in town, looking for any work he could find. The shop owner, an old man named Mr. Davies, looked him up and down. "All I have is this," Mr. Davies said, handing him a broom, sweeping the floor. "Minimum pay, nothing glamorous." Young Harold hesitated for a moment. His friends were already working at big offices, downtown, wearing suits, carrying briefcases. This felt small, embarrassing even. But he needed the money. He took the broom. "I'll take it," he said. Word got around quickly. Harold's friends found out. He was sweeping floors at a tiny shop, while they worked as interns at big companies. One evening, his friend Michael laughed when he saw him. "A broom? Really, Harold? You could have applied anywhere else." Harold felt the sting of embarrassment, but he said nothing. He simply nodded and kept sweeping. That night, alone in the shop after closing, he looked around at the empty shelves and thought to himself, "If this is what I have right now, I'll be the best at it." From that day, Harold didn't just sweep the floor. He did it better than anyone had ever done it. He arrived early. He organized the shelves without being asked. He learned the names of every regular customer. Mr. Davies noticed. One afternoon, he handed Harold a notebook. "Since you're here early anyway," he said, "why don't you help me with the inventory too?" Harold agreed immediately. He stayed late that night, learning how the shop tracked its stock, its orders, its numbers, things far beyond sweeping floors. Over the following months, Harold's responsibilities grew, not because he asked for more, but because he had proven himself trustworthy with what little he was given. He began helping with deliveries, then with talking to suppliers. Then, eventually, Mr. Davies allowed him to help manage the register. Each new task was small. None of them felt like big breaks. But each one built on the last, like bricks stacking one on top of another. Meanwhile, some of his friends had already quit their internships, bored and unmotivated, moving from job to job, never staying long enough to grow. 2 years later, Mr. Davies, now old and tired, called Harold into the back office. "I'm retiring soon," he said. "I don't have children to pass this shop to. But I've watched you grow here, from sweeping floors to understanding every part of this business better than I do." He slid a folder across the table. "I want to sell you this shop." Harold took over the shop, with a mixture of excitement and quiet fear. It was, after all, still the same small, modest space he had once swept as a teenager. Except now, every decision, every risk, every success or failure belonged to him alone. He didn't change everything overnight. Instead, he applied the same patience he had learned all those years ago, paying attention to small details, listening carefully to customers, fixing small problems before they became big ones. Slowly, the shop began to grow. He introduced new products customers had been asking for. He trained a young employee the same way Mr. Davies had once trained him, with patience, not shortcuts. Within a year, the shop's earnings had doubled. Encouraged, Harold took a careful risk. He opened a second location across town, using savings he had built over years of careful spending. But because he brought the same discipline, the same respect for small details, to every new decision, years passed. What had once been a single rundown shop grew into a small chain of respected stores across the city, each one known for quality and honest service. One afternoon, a man walked into Harold's main office looking for a job. It was Michael, his old friend, the one who had once laughed at him for sweeping floors. Michael didn't recognize him at first, not until Harold stood up smiling. Michael's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Harold, you own all of this?" Harold simply smiled and gestured for him to sit down. He didn't bring up the past. He didn't need to. That evening, alone in his office, Harold opened a drawer and took out an old, worn broom, the very same one Mr. Davies had once handed him. He kept it there, not as a reminder of hardship, but as a reminder of where everything true and lasting had actually begun. Back in the present, the fire in Harold's study had burned low, casting a warm amber glow across the room. Ryan sat quietly, wide-eyed, absorbing everything he had just heard. "So, your first job was sweeping a floor?" Ryan asked again, as if he still couldn't quite believe it. "Yes," Harold said, smiling gently. "And it taught me more than any office job ever could have. Success doesn't start with a big opportunity, Ryan. Starts with giving your very best to whatever is in front of you, even if it feels small, even if it feels small, even if it feels embarrassing, even if it's just sweeping a floor." He leaned forward slightly, placing a warm hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Most people wait for the big break. They think success arrives all at once, in one dramatic moment. But it doesn't. It arrives quietly, one small effort at a time, stacked patiently on top of each other, until one day you look back and realize how far you've come." Ryan looked down at his own hands, thinking about the things he had convinced himself didn't really matter. "Do you still have it?" Ryan asked suddenly. "The broom?" Harold chuckled warmly and stood up, walking toward his desk. He opened the drawer and pulled out the same old worn broom, placing it gently in front of Ryan. Ryan reached out and touched the broom's worn handle, feeling for the first time the full weight of his grandfather's story. Harold smiled and said one final thing. "Don't wait for the big break, Ryan. Do the small thing in front of you, and do it better than anyone else. That's how every big thing truly begins."